Vrais 7 had 3 rules for survival. Everything was trying to kill you. Trust nothing that looked harmless. And when the acidic fog rolled in from the canyons, you found shelter or you became part of the landscape. Cade Merrick had learned these rules through trial, error, and several close calls with things that had too many teeth and not enough respect for the food chain. He was checking his traps near the eastern canyon, tripwires connected to shaped charges that would collapse the unstable rock face, when he heard the unmistakable sound of plasma fire echoing through the ravine. "That's either extremely good news or catastrophically bad news," he muttered, already moving toward the sound because 3 months alone on a Deathworld had severely damaged his self-preservation instincts. He found her surrounded by corpses. Ravagers, 6 of them, their armored bodies torn and burned. The creatures were Vrais 7 apex predators, 6-legged nightmares that hunted in packs and could bite through starship hull plating. 3 more circled the alien woman who stood in the center of the carnage, her armor shredded, her blade broken to half its length, her long ears bleeding from multiple lacerations. She was Kaelari. Cade recognized the species from survival briefings. Warrior culture, proud, dangerous. Her ears swept back in defensive posture, her silver-blue skin marked with bioluminescent tattoos that pulsed with her heartbeat. The Ravagers were toying with her, waiting for her to collapse. Smart predators. Terrible mistake. Cade triggered his trap early. The canyon wall came down in a controlled avalanche, crushing 2 Ravagers under tons of rock and creating enough chaos for him to close the distance. He fired his plasma pistol, jury-rigged from salvage and spite, into the 3rd Ravager's exposed joint. The creature shrieked and turned on him, which gave the alien woman the opening she needed to drive her broken blade through its skull. The last Ravager decided this prey was more trouble than it was worth and fled into the canyon shadows. Smart predator. Correct assessment. "Move," Cade said, grabbing the woman's arm. "Fog's coming." She staggered but moved, her combat instincts overriding whatever injuries she'd sustained. They made it to his shelter, a reinforced cave system he'd spent 2 months fortifying, just as the acidic fog rolled across the canyon like toxic silk. Inside, Cade activated the air filtration system and turned to assess his unexpected guest. She'd collapsed against the wall, her breathing labored, her armor practically melted in places. "Right," he said, pulling out his medical supplies. "Let's see what we're working with. Burns, lacerations, probable concussion," and he scanned her with his diagnostic tool. "Some kind of venom in your system. The Ravagers are venomous. Did you know that? I learned that the hard way." She tried to speak, coughed instead. "Don't talk. Talking wastes energy." Cade started treating the worst wounds first, applying synthetic skin and broad-spectrum anti-venom that should work on her biochemistry. Should being the operative word. "You're lucky I found you, or unlucky depending on your perspective, still deciding which." He worked in focused silence, sealing burns, extracting venom, stabilizing her condition. Her bioluminescent tattoos flickered erratically, which he assumed was bad but didn't know enough about Kaelari biology to confirm. When he finished, she was unconscious but stable. Cade dragged her to the sleeping area, a corner with salvaged padding that passed for a bed, and covered her with thermal blankets. Then he collapsed in his own corner, exhausted and questioning every decision that had led to this moment. He woke to find her standing over him, her hand on a weapon that hadn't been there before. Her eyes, gold with vertical pupils, tracked him with predatory precision. "Easy," Cade said, not moving. "I'm the one who dragged you out of the canyon. Remember, explosion, fog, questionable medical care." Recognition flickered across her face. She looked past him, through the shelter's reinforced viewport, and saw the Ravager corpses outside being slowly consumed by Vrais 7 aggressive ecosystem. "You saved me." Her voice carried an accent that turned common words into something formal. "From certain death." "Yeah, well, seemed rude to leave you to the Ravagers. They have terrible table manners." Cade sat up slowly, hands visible. "How are you feeling?" "I am Serath Kaelwyn," she said instead of answering. "Second blade of the Crimson Throne, daughter of the Ascendant Queen of the Kaelari Dominion." "That's impressive, very royal." Cade pulled out a water container. "I'm Cade Merrick, stranded contractor with trust issues. You should drink something." She took the water but didn't drink, still staring at him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "You saved my life without knowing who I was." "That didn't seem relevant at the time. You were dying. I had medical supplies and a functioning cave. Simple math. There is nothing simple about what you did." She knelt, which seemed unnecessarily formal given the circumstances. "You have given me the Verath. I've given you basic medical attention and shelter from acidic fog. That's not what's Verath." Her long ears tilted forward and something like determination crossed her face. "The debt of life, the sacred bond. You are now my Verath bound, and I will not leave your side." Cade stared at her, then at his shelter, then back at her. "I think the venom might still be affecting your cognition." "I am perfectly lucid." She finally drank the water. "And I am staying." 2 days passed. Serath healed with the efficiency of someone whose biology had been optimized for warfare. She also refused to leave, which became increasingly awkward as Cade tried to maintain his survival routines while an alien princess followed him everywhere. "You don't have to come with me," he said for the 4th time that morning as he prepared to check his perimeter traps. "It's dangerous." "That is why I'm coming." She adjusted the salvaged armor he'd helped her repair, her long ears perked attentively. "Your safety is my concern now. My safety was my concern for 3 months before you showed up, and I'm still alive." He grabbed his equipment pack. "Statistically, I'm doing fine." "But statistics do not account for ravagers, toxic flora, or the 17 other species on this planet capable of killing an unprepared human." She followed him to the shelter entrance. "I am prepared. You are unprepared but stubborn." "But stubbornness is a survival trait on Vrais 7. They moved through the hostile landscape together, and Cade had to admit, grudgingly, that Serath was useful. She spotted threats before his scanners did, moved with silent efficiency, and had combat reflexes that were probably illegal in civilized space. At the 4th trap site, while Cade was resetting the charges, he finally asked the question that had been bothering him. "When are your people coming for you?" "They're not." She was scanning the canyon ridges for movement. "I told them not to." Cade nearly dropped the charge. "You what?" "I sent them away before you found me." She glanced at him. "I was separated from my unit during a diplomatic mission. They wanted to extract me immediately. I refused." "Why would you refuse rescue? This is a Deathworld. Royal privilege doesn't work here." "Because extraction would have prevented the Verath." She said it like it was obvious. "By the time they could have reached me, I would have been dead. You saved me instead. The bond is formed." Cade sat back on his heels, trying to process this. "Let me make sure I understand. You deliberately stayed in danger so that when I saved you, you could invoke some kind of life debt." "No," her ears flattened slightly. "I stayed because honor demanded it. You saved me without knowing my status, without expectation of reward. That makes the Verath sacred. Had my people extracted me, the bond would be invalid." "This is insane." "This is tradition." She moved closer, her gold eyes intense. "Among my people, the Verath is not gratitude. It is not temporary. When a warrior chooses to stay with their Verath bound, they forsake all other duties. Your protection becomes their purpose. Your enemies become theirs. Your survival takes precedence over their own." "That's," Cade searched for words, "that's a terrible system. What if I don't want a bodyguard?" "You do not have to want it. I have chosen it." Her voice softened. "Do you understand what I have given up? I was second blade. I had position power, a path to the throne. My mother has sent 3 messages demanding my return. I have refused them all." "Why?" The word came out more desperate than he intended. "Why would you throw away everything for someone you don't know?" Because you saw me dying and your first thought was to help, not to calculate advantage, not to consider politics. She touched her chest, where her bioluminescent tattoos pulsed steadily. You acted with honor, and honor must be answered with honor. Cade looked at this alien princess who had abandoned royalty to follow him around a Deathworld, and realized with creeping certainty that she was completely serious. You really won't leave. I cannot leave. The Verath is unbreakable. She tilted her head. Is my presence truly so unwelcome? He thought about the past 2 days, about having someone to watch his back, about conversations that weren't just him talking to himself, about the way she'd laughed, actually laughed, when he'd explained how he'd accidentally discovered which plants were explosive by setting himself on fire. It's not unwelcome, he admitted. It's just complicated. Life is complicated. She smiled, and it transformed her face from warrior to something gentler. Survival is simple. Together, we survive better. You're very confident about that. I am very good at survival. She returned to scanning the ridges. And you are stubborn enough to live on Vrais 7 for 3 months. Together, we are formidable. Cade finished resetting the trap, shaking his head. This is insane. You said that already. Worth repeating. But he didn't argue further as they headed back to the shelter, and some part of him, the part that had been desperately lonely on this hostile world, was glad she was staying, sacred bond or not. Weeks passed. The routine became familiar. Cade handled technical survival, while Serath handled the things that wanted to eat them. They argued frequently about what qualified as necessary risk, with Serath insisting that Cade's entire approach to survival was inefficiently dangerous, and Cade countering that her approach was violently paranoid. There is no such thing as too much paranoia on a Deathworld, she said one evening while they were preparing dinner from Vrais' 7 limited edible options. There is when you want to fight everything we encounter. Cade was processing protein paste, making it marginally less terrible. Not every creature here is hostile. Name one non-hostile creature. He thought. Okay, bad example, but my point stands. We can avoid conflict. Avoiding conflict is how prey thinks. She tested the edge of her repaired blade. We are not prey. Despite their arguments, they worked well together. Serath learned human humor, Cade's particular brand of sarcastic survival commentary, and occasionally deployed it with devastating effect. He learned Kaelari combat philosophy, and enough of her language to understand when she was insulting something's ancestors in 3 different tenses. She told him about her life during the quiet hours, about being raised for war, trained since childhood to be a weapon for the throne, about always being second blade, second daughter, second in line, about duty that left no room for choice. I never decided anything, she said one night, her bioluminescent tattoos glowing softly in the darkness. My path was set before I could speak. Warrior, princess, tool of the state. And now, Cade asked, now I chose. She looked at him. For the first time I made a choice that was mine. The Verath gave me that. You could have chosen anything. Why this? Why me? Because you didn't see a princess or a weapon. You saw someone who needed help. Her long ears tilted forward. Do you know how rare that is? Before Cade could respond, his perimeter alarm screamed. Movement, multiple signals, organized pattern, military approach. They were ready in seconds. Serath grabbed her blade. Cade activated defensive systems. Through the viewport they saw them landing Kaelari drop ships marked with the Crimson Throne's insignia. Your people, Cade said. My former people. Her voice went cold. This is a retrieval team. They emerged from the shelter together. 10 Kaelari warriors stood in formation, their armor pristine, their weapons ready. At their center stood a commander whose ears bore marks of high rank. Second Blade Serath, the commander said formally. The Ascendant Queen commands your return. I refuse. Serath's blade was drawn, her stance ready. You cannot refuse your duty. My duty is to my Verath bound. She positioned herself between Cade and the soldiers. I have taken the sacred oath. I will not return. Shock rippled through the formation. The commander's ears flattened in disbelief. You invoke the Verath for a human. For the one who saved me with honor. Her voice carried absolute conviction. He did not know my rank, did not seek advantage. He acted from compassion alone. The Verath is valid and binding. The Queen will not accept this. You are second blade, your sister. My sister will be ascendant. I choose exile. The word hung in the air like a weapon. The soldiers looked at each other, uncertain. Their commander's expression shifted from shock to something like pity. If you refuse return, you forfeit title, position, and family. You will be declared outcast. No Kaelari will offer you aid. I understand. Serath didn't waver. I choose him. The commander studied Cade, perhaps trying to understand what made this human worth sacrificing everything. Then they saluted, a warrior's acknowledgement, and ordered the withdrawal. As the ships lifted, leaving them alone on Vrais' 7 hostile surface, Cade turned to Serath. You just gave up everything. I gave up duty. She sheathed her blade. I gained choice. She met his eyes. Do you regret saving me? No, he surprised himself with how quickly he answered. But I don't understand why you choose this. You will, she smiled, eventually. The rival faction arrived 3 days later. Houses opposed to Serath's family who saw opportunity in a disgraced princess, stranded on a Deathworld. 20 warriors expecting an easy target. They found something else entirely. Cade had spent 3 months learning Vrais' 7 dangers. Serath had spent a lifetime learning warfare. Together, they turned the Deathworld itself into a weapon. The attackers advanced in textbook formation, professional and coordinated. They triggered the first trap, explosive plants Cade had carefully transplanted into a kill zone, and formation became chaos. Serath moved like war incarnate, her blade finding gaps in armor with surgical precision. Cade collapsed tunnels filled with toxic gas, lured attackers into Ravager territory, used every dirty trick Vrais' 7 had taught him. The battle was brutal. Professional soldiers against a survivor and an exile, but the survivor knew the terrain and the exile fought with nothing left to lose. When a flanking attack got through, Serath threw herself between Cade and the blade. Her armor took the hit, but the impact sent her sprawling. Cade dragged her behind cover, his hands shaking as he assessed the damage. You're supposed to protect yourself, he said, applying pressure to the wound. I am protecting myself. She grabbed his wrist. You are my Verath, your survival is my survival. That's backwards. That's honor. The remaining attackers withdrew, bloodied and reconsidering their life choices. Cade treated Serath's injuries in the shelter, his hands steady from practice but his mind racing. Do you regret it? He asked quietly, giving up everything. Every day, she met his eyes unflinching, but I don't regret the choice. The Verath freed me, Cade. For the first time in my life I chose my path, chose who I wanted to stand beside. You could have chosen to go home, return to your family. My family saw a blade, a tool. Her bioluminescent tattoos pulsed softly. You saw someone worth saving, not because of what I could do for you, just because I needed help. Cade finished bandaging her wounds, his thoughts complicated. Somewhere in the past weeks, she'd stopped being an obligation and become something essential. Someone he trusted absolutely in a place where trust meant everything. The Verath, he said. Does it require me to accept it formally? No. My vow is mine, regardless of your acceptance. She tilted her head. Why do you ask? Because I want to accept it. Not the sacred bond part, I still think that's insane. But the staying part, the partnership part. He met her golden eyes. You're not my bodyguard, Serath. You're my ally, my friend. And yeah, I want you to stay, but not because tradition demands it. Something shifted in her expression. Walls falling, revealing genuine emotion beneath warrior composure. You accept me, truly. Yeah, he smiled. Though I'm keeping final say on which plants we fight, your aggression toward local flora is concerning. She laughed, full and genuine. and the sound filled the shelter with warmth that had nothing to do with thermal systems. Agreed, if you accept that my judgment on combat tactics is superior. Debatable, but we'll workshop it. They sat together in the shelter, as Vrais' 7 hostile knight pressed against the reinforced walls. An exiled alien princess and a stranded human contractor, bound by choice rather than duty, facing a galaxy that would hunt them with loyalty forged in blood and trust built on honest survival. We should fortify the eastern approaches, Serath said eventually. The rival houses will send more. Already planning it. Cade pulled up his tactical map, and I found a cavern system that might have water sources. Want to explore it tomorrow? Together, always together. That's kind of the point of the whole Verath thing, right? She smiled, her long ears relaxed in content. That is exactly the point. Outside, Vrais' 7 continued its endless attempts to kill everything on its surface. Inside, 2 people who had chosen each other against all reason and tradition planned their survival, their partnership stronger than sacred law because it was built on something simpler. Mutual respect, genuine trust, and the understanding that sometimes the most powerful bonds are the ones we choose freely, on the most unforgiving world in the galaxy.